Usually, I start the video with a disclaimer or an announcement. Today, I will start the video with a personal story that happened recently in the place where I live, which is an European capital basically. I have a friend who works in different non-profit institutions that are on the front line of the housing crisis. I heard many stories that are generally shocking and strong savageness in our society, but the last one shocked me the most, not because of the story itself, but how clearly it shows the structural relationship of power between landlords and our system. It's a story of an old man that was struggling with sickness. Due to that, he was not able to pay his rent. After a few months, without receiving the payment, the landlord decided to call on authorities to get the old man out of the house. The authorities literally stormed into his house, broke the door and arrested the man. He was taken to court, and the judge not only obliged the man to pay a few rents that he owned, but also for all the legal dispense that the landlord had and all the things that were broken during the storm by the police. So in the end, this man, who barely was able to survive, was obliged by the court to pay 6 times the amount that he owned in rents to the landlord for all the damages, literally killing economically an already struggling person. And I will end it here, and I will let you take your own conclusion from this. On 18th of March of 1871, on the streets of Paris, a legendary phrase was pronounced, "Vive la Commune," a very important event in left-wing history, but I'm not here today to talk about it. One of the key actions taken by the Commune was the abolition of rent for those who had been unable to pay. The Commune also sought to address the housing crisis by promoting the development of cooperative housing and encouraging the occupation of empty buildings by homeless people. They established the commission to investigate the possibility of expropriation of vacant or underutilized properties, with the goal of converting them into housing for the poor and working class. Additionally, the Commune sought to improve the living condition of the working class by implementing a health and safety regulation for landlords, as well as establishing standards for the quality of the housing. They also sought to improve access to the public service such as water and sanitation, which were often inadequate in working-class neighborhoods. As you might have understood by now, even then, almost 150 years ago, the housing question was a big problem that the population felt the urgency to address. And now, almost 150 years later, we are still facing the same problem, even in a more extreme variation. Here in the West, where I'm from, the housing crisis has achieved an all-time level problem. But why is that? Why is that by the lowest estimate, nearly 10 million people are in the risk of eviction as per next few months, a truly unprecedented number in our modern society. And a much rise in the prices in the housing market has put us in a unique situation, a crisis. A crisis which, if not resolved, may lead to a serious problem in the very near future. Problems directly linked to physical and mental health of our society. And before going deeper, let's set it straight. The housing crisis is intimately connected with capitalism, as it is a direct result of so-called market forces that are intrinsic to capitalist economies. Furthermore, capitalist economies tend to prioritize economic growth over social welfare, which can result in a lack of investment in affordable housing and public services. This can make it difficult for those who are struggling to make ends meet to access basic necessities like housing, healthcare, and education. In a capitalist system, the housing is a subject to laws of supply and demand. Housing is transformed into a commodity, which means that the price of the housing is determined by the balance between number of available homes and number of people that want to buy or rent them. Housing is treated not as a basic necessity, but as an investment opportunity. Alongside the growing housing securities, there's another topic directly connected to it that should worry us, because it's affecting many people, some of whom may be very close to you. Of course, I'm talking about the mental health problem connected with the housing crisis. And before proceeding, I just want to let it clear that when I'm talking about housing, I'm not only talking about a lack of affordable housing, but I'm also talking about homelessness or an inadequate housing condition, or people that are in very close risk of eviction. There is a growing body of research that suggests a strong link between the housing crisis and mental health. The stress and uncertainty caused by the housing crisis can have a negative impact on the mental health. For example, if individuals are struggling to afford housing or are facing eviction, they may have experienced significant stress and anxiety, which can lead to depression and other mental health issues over time. And let me remind you that the first degree of homelessness is actually being in an imminent risk of eviction due to financial instability, which, to be honest, many of us are. The housing crisis can also impact mental health by limiting individuals' access to basic needs such as food, healthcare, and social support. For example, if individuals are forced to spend a large portion of their income on housing, they may not have enough money left to purchase nutritious food or access healthcare services. This can lead to physical health problems that can further impact the mental health. Additionally, but not least important, way in which it may affect us is inadequate or unstable housing conditions, such as overcrowding or exposure to environmental toxins, can also have a negative impact on our mental health. For example, exposure to mold or other allergens can exaggerate conditions such as asthma, which can turn have a negative impact on our mental health. The unaffordability of the house is the biggest problem in the house, but is far the only one. Because never forget that landlords are parasites that will do anything they can to exploit you as much as they can. And last but not least, we should talk about how literally homelessness, which is often a result of housing crisis, can be particularly damaging to our mental health. Homelessness can be traumatic and isolating, and individuals who experience homelessness often lack access to adequate mental health service. They may also be more vulnerable to violence and other forms of trauma, which can furthermore impact their mental health. We live in a society that hates the homeless. We neglect that they are one of the biggest victims of our society, that in majority of cases, those people have mental health problems, or are extremely unlucky people. We also forget that it's much more probable for any of us to become a homeless person than a billionaire. But there are several examples in history that show us that we are not doomed to this situation. And I want to tell about one of the biggest ones. Red Vienna was a period in history of Vienna, Austria, from 1919 to 1934, during which the city was governed by a socialist administration. One of the key achievements of this administration was the construction of affordable, high-quality housing for the working class residents, which became known as Red Vienna housing. During this period, the socialist government implemented a comprehensive program of public housing construction, with the goal of providing affordable, high-quality housing for all residents of the city. This was seen as a necessary measure to address the housing crisis that had been developing in Vienna after World War I, which had left many residents living in overcrowded, unsustainable conditions. But don't get me wrong, people were living in a horrible condition much more before World War I. I will quote an official from the 1900s. Life, in blocks of flat, had little to do with life per se. In 1910, almost 100,000 people were subtenants. Another 70,000 were so-called Bettinger, people who rented a space to sleep on and had basically no roof over their heads at all. In Antachy, 1/4 of the flats consisting of a kitchen and a single room accommodated 6 to 10 people. This housing situation also led to enormously health problems. In 1900, the average life expectancy of an unqualified worker was mere 33 years. Of every 100 children, an average of 24 died during their first year of life. The new housing projects were designed with the needs of the working class residents in mind, and were built to be functional and comfortable, with plenty of light and air. They were often located in green spaces and included communal facilities such as gardens, playgrounds, and community centers. The apartments were also equipped with modern amenities, such as indoor plumbing, electricity, and glass heating. In addition to building new housing, the socialist government also took measures to improve the living condition of existing housing stock. They implemented health and safety regulation for landlords and established standards for the quality of the housing. They will also provide financial support for families to make necessary repairs and improve to their home. The Red Vienna housing project were not only designed to meet the basic needs of residents, but also foster a sense of community and social cohesion. They were often designed in a way to encourage interaction between the residents, with communal spaces and shared facilities. Overall, the Red Vienna housing project were a groundbreaking achievement in the history of social housing. They provide affordable, high-quality housing for thousands of working-class residents and set standards for public housing construction that has been emulated in cities around the world since. But like all good things, Red Vienna ended, not because of the will of the people, but because of the Nazis. Because although as a society we like to forget that the fact that Nazis were a pure form of capitalism, and as such, after occupying Austria and seizing power, they rolled back all the social policies implemented by Red Vienna movement. Despite the fact that Red Vienna officially ended in 1934, still, to this day we can see enormous impact that it had in Vienna history and today's Vienna's reality, where Vienna actually is struggling the least within this housing crisis situation. Despite Red Vienna being the biggest and the most beautiful example, there are plenty more examples, and the majority of them under socialist governments. As very few of you might know, this is a remake of an older video that I did, and it saddens me very much that the housing situation only got worse since I published my original video, almost 2 years ago. And there is no prospect it's getting any better time soon, because in reality, what we could do to resolve the housing crisis is things like nationalizing the housing industry, provide social housing, implement rent control, use cooperative housing models, provide free or low-cost housing to those in need. All things that could never be done under a capitalist system, because one of the system's main function is to protect the divine right of private property. And who am I? But maybe the time has come for us, as a society, to reconsider the divine right of private property, if we want to advance to a more equal society.